Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
It really feels like the cat with the laser pointer. It's like you've led the cat up to the top of the building, and now you're leading it over the edge.
President Trump is rebalancing trade around the world and making things more fair for the American people.
I think that anytime the deep state can like overcapitalize in whatever situation they have, they're going to.
But the rest of it is a very well organized and well funded color revolution operation of the type they run all over the world again and again and again to destabilize entire society.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Badlands Daily. Ghost and I are back by popular demand and also because we're the only ones available to do the show today.
Good morning, Ash. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Good morning to everybody out there in Badlandia. Yeah, it's a beautiful
When do
day
you
here.
travel?
Beautiful day
Tomorrow,
here in
right?
Virginia. Tomorrow. So I'll be landing up there tomorrow and hoping maybe to meet up with people in Boston. But I don't know how practical that is. I was
What time do you get in?
around 1:30.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
Caleb and I get in at 2:30. So,
Okay.
I don't know if you're getting bags and stuff, but you're probably pretty close to 2:30 at the point that you get your bags. If you're checking bags, but you're a dude, so you're probably not checking bags.
I'm not checking a bag, but I mean, if it makes sense, I'll definitely wait. I got to talk to Bernie Reich. He did mention he was like, it may not be worth going into Boston. I've never been to Boston, so I don't know. What
Oh,
so,
yeah. I don't know that we'll have time on Thursday. You might, because you get in an hour before I do, but we've got to get to I think the VIP dinner's at 7, right?
Yeah.
And it's an hour drive.
I was hoping to check out the Green Dragon, but I got to ask BB if that's even practical.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes a difference. Oh, you're leaving on Saturday. I was going to say Caleb and I are going to go to the Green Dragon on Sunday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because he'll be 21.
Yeah, that's right. So, everybody, Badlands Media is headed to Plymouth, Massachusetts with the 8th stop on the Great American Restoration Tour. It starts tomorrow, May 1st through May 4th. And on May 4th, rumor has it that CanCon Lupo might dress up like Star Wars. So you don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss out on the other conversations and shenanigans. So get your virtual tickets today. With virtual ticket, you ensure that you're part of the action. Wherever you are, you get access to our exclusive GART Telegram chat, which I love the kind of arc of that, right? So like you get people in there, and the first few weeks of the first season of the Telegram chat being open, people are like, I don't know how to use Telegram, and where do I find groups, and should I really go by myself, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to meet up with people. And then as travel days start coming in, you see people's travel pictures, right? There's people driving from all over the country to GART right now, and they're posting pictures of their trips along the way. As the hosts start to travel, we'll be doing the same. CanCon posted yesterday that he was put in room 420, and I have to ask Mrs. Bright if that was intentional. He's in room 420 with a machine of munchies across from his door. If that was just like chance, that's pretty awesome.
It's pretty serendipitous.
Yeah. And then we get into the conference, and people are real, start to engage and ask the questions. And there's, long running jokes that happen. This is where the ghost sleeping meme came from, was the folks in the GART Telegram chat led by Jackie and Christina basically put you in every historical picture ever. Don't fall asleep at Gart is the takeaway of that, unless you want your own calendar. And then as we get towards the end of the weekend, it's sharing information and where can I find, more from you, and, people downloading the pictures that everybody had, and, messages of love and how we all love each other. There's an arc to it that is, I think, perfectly tracked in the Telegram chat. You also get, as I said, behind the scenes photos and videos. You get to ask the panels questions, engage with the content. There are changes to our programming schedule this week. So if you're missing out and you're missing your Badlands Media, then you should get a GART virtual ticket, badlandsmedia.tv/events. If you can't watch the whole thing live, that's totally fine, because everything is available on demand after the fact. I'm so pumped. I'm just really excited. I love that we're having a first 100 days GART.
Yeah, that is good timing. We've had a lot of great timings with these ever since Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, we really have. We had Myrtle Beach was the week after the election, and then what timing were we for? Were we like 2 weeks in after Inauguration Day for Vegas?
I think Vegas was early. Vegas was early March, so it was probably like 5 or 6 weeks in, but it was still.
Was it Vegas in February? Was it in March?
I think it was in March. I can't remember at this point. I think it was March.
Yeah, I don't know. They blend together, but we're very excited about it. And it's gonna be great. We have good content planned. G Money and I are kicking off the tone of the event. I love last night. John is like, yeah, I mean, I figured we didn't know which way it was gonna go, so we'd get it out of the way. But the trade-off there, Mr. Harold, is that you're allowing G and I to set the tone for the event.
There you go.
God bless us, everyone. Let's hear from our first incredible sponsor today. If you're still tossing and turning all night and feeling edgy during the day, let me tell you about CBD from CBD Distillery. Millions are turning to their CBD for relief because it works. In fact, over 90% of customers report better sleep with CBD. And it's not just sleep. CBD Distillery offers targeted formulations for just about everything: sleep, stress, mood, and focus, pain after exercise. They even have CBD for pets. And it's all made with the highest quality clean ingredients, no fillers, just premium CBD. So my favorite is the Ohm. It kind of just has this chill, de-stress, kind of chill out vibe. What's your favorite, Ghost?
The sleep.
Yeah. My husband likes the sleep too. He's
Yep.
pretty hooked on it. With over 2 million satisfied customers and 100% money back guarantee, CBD Distillery is the source to trust for your CBD. If you're struggling with sleep, stress, or other health concerns and haven't found relief, make the change like millions are to CBD from CBD Distillery. For a limited time, you can save 25% off your entire purchase. Visit CB Distillery and use promo code Badlands. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code Badlands. cbdistillery.com. Specific product availability depends on individual state regulations. Because of course it does. Because they would regulate us out of existence if they could. I think. Anyway. All right. Let's get into the news. So last night we had the Trump rally. I'm trying to find my thing here. I think, is it this one? It is this one. Hold for processing. So this week, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but the administration is flexing on 100 days, and they have to go with a week of 100 days because there's too many accomplishments. There's just too much to cover in one 100-day celebration. So Monday we talked immigration. I've got a first 100 days of immigration in 1 minute video we'll play here in a second. Yesterday was focused on the economy. Today it's all about foreign policy. And so you can see here, White House getting ready in just 100 days. So this is Department of State that the White House reposted. Just 100 days, POTUS's foreign policy agenda has already made America great again. There is also a cabinet meeting today, which will, I believe, be carrying on Badlands Live this afternoon. So that's pretty cool. Trump held a rally yesterday. I think most folks saw that. We carried it on Badlands Media, and this article made me laugh super hard. So Is MAGA morale down amid Trump's slide in polls? What rally goers say. So this guy, Nick, goes, I mean, ostensibly, he actually went himself to the Trump rally in Michigan last night. He says President Trump played some of his greatest hits Tuesday evening at a rally in Macomb County. His diehard supporters followed most every word. Why it matters. The president was in Michigan to celebrate the first 100 days of his second term, which he described to supporters at Macomb County College in Warren as the most successful 100 days in the history of our nation. And I think that holds up. That's true. Before his speech, Trump arrived on Air Force One on Tuesday. He was joined by Gretchen Whitmer and Pete Hegseth. We have that video. She was she was caught off guard by having to thank President Trump publicly at the same time that she's ostensibly running for president herself. Trump took aim. So here's the thing. This is why this article is funny to me. So they go around and they try to find some Trump supporters that aren't happy with what's happening in our country, and they can't. Everybody's like, this is exactly what I vote for. Thank God he won. Thank God that God was with him. It was very celebratory. Couldn't ask for anything better in Trump's first 100 days. He saved the U.S. Everything is going smoothly and the best it could go. So then we get down. So like they don't have anybody. They don't have anybody that's upset. Except this guy.
What's the problem over there? He was in North Carolina. He did so great. What's the problem over there? What's the problem? Is that a radical left lunatic? He's just a child. All right, get him out. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Get him out of here.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I thought it was a guy. Thank you. And she now has to go home to a mother who's a big Trump fan. Her mother's watching. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, he's the best troll. All right. So, yeah, he's just, I said he and it's a she. Well, you never can tell, Mr. President, and you're not allowed to assume anymore. So they're the only person that they could get to speak in a word about Trump at the Trump rally is this guy, what's his name? Evan Aldridge spoke to Newsweek outside the venue. He was approaching Trump supporters, asking if they liked the Constitution and James Madison. He was largely ignored while holding a makeshift paper sign reading, "He cheats on his wife like he cheats on the country." Quote, "If I tell people about the Constitution to go to town halls and meetings, you have to do it through our system of checks and balances. You settle the dispute. He lied about the 2020 election." No, he didn't, Evan. And that's what really made me upset enough to take action to tell these people how our system worked. He's attended multiple Trump rallies, saying that the counter protest he witnessed outside the venue hours before it began was the biggest he's ever seen. So just to recap, and then they go into punditry and polling to say that, yeah, actually Trump is losing popularity. And even though MAGA won't tell us that Trump is losing popularity, certainly he must be, because we found a protester at his event.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I love Trump, by the way. We all love Trump, obviously, but it's taken years to kind of like understand this. But I totally understand why he has created the troll, and it's because if you go back and look at what he was saying 40 years ago on Oprah and at the RNC convention and at all these places, he was saying the exact same thing he's saying now. He was just saying it in a very polished, very like straightforward political way, like a way you would say it as a commentator, and nobody cared. Nobody like listened to him. I mean, people listened to him obviously, but not enough people, and it never like caught on. So by making it very antagonistic and being very provocative, the media now pays attention to what he says. And I mean, 10 years ago, that's how he won the presidency, is by provoking the media into covering what he was saying by saying things that pissed people off. And it's brilliant.
It's such a great point. Brian we kind of got into it in the Badlands daily chat, or in the Badlands chat last night, because of the MS-13 thing that he said in the interview with the ABC guy. We have a clip of the ABC guy, but we won't get into all the details of that interview because we just don't have time. But President Trump wouldn't let it go that it said MS-13 on the knuckles. Now, what we know is on the knuckles is like, there's the marijuana leaf, I forget what the second thing is for the S, the cross, which is like a 1, and then the half face skull is the 3. And that's, allegedly, according to people who know, because they, trace and track and follow gang members and prosecute them, that means MS-13. On the picture, it appears, right, to us that the FBI or whomever has put MS-13 in text characters above it, and it sounded like President Trump was arguing that those text characters, the spelled out MS-13, was part of that tattoo. I don't believe it is, but to your point, that brought Abrego Garcia back into the news, back into the headlines, and everybody's squabbling about it. And so I said, to Brian last night, I'm like, I would not be surprised if we learn new details about Abrego Garcia as a result of this, like, or in the same, in the same time period. Because usually if President Trump says or does something that we all are like, what is he doing? That seems stupid. I think history shows that usually comes back around from a narrative standpoint. Sure enough, we got new details about Abrego Garcia just a couple hours after that interview aired, and everybody was talking about it. Apparently so we keep hearing Maryland man, right? And he's a dad and he just loves his kids and stuff, right? So apparently his wife, the one that was, my husband's alive. I'm just so happy. I just can't, let's just ignore the fact that he beat me with his work boot and stuff. Like, he's alive. And that's really good. Well, her ex-husband, who is the father of at least some of these kids, he filed in 2018 court docs that he was afraid for his kids' lives. He was afraid for his kids' safety because his wife was dating a gang member.
Interesting. Yeah, this is exactly what Trump does. And we actually I have a cipher. Like, I have a narrative burning bright name for this now after my conversation with Oak on Monday on Book of Trump. It's called a demonstration. So he said, he explained the topic was maneuver warfare. And so we were talking about it in the kinetic context, but we were also kind of applying it to the narrative war. And he said, everyone assumes that everything's a feint, meaning that you attack the enemy and then you retreat, and the enemy then follows you and then you encircle them. It's like, that's what's called a feint. A demonstration is when you send a detachment over to a different area of the battlefield, attack, divert the enemy's attention somewhere, and then you come in and you flank them from a different direction. That's called a demonstration. And so this is a demonstration because Trump understands what the communists in the media do is they engage in semantics. They argue semantics. They argue language. They try to control words, control language. Yeah. So he uses that to his advantage by using really, really strange syntax and tripping up on certain words and mispronouncing words and getting little details in a story wrong that don't really matter to the overall story, but it gets the media worked up, and then they want to correct him because they're so hyper obsessive and OCD about that. And they're like, do you see how big of an idiot Trump is? But then they end up conveying the message that he wants communicated.
Yeah. Did you see the thread yesterday? This is a little bit off topic, but Jordan posted it, which is why I saw it. And actually, before I forget, I want to thank Phoenix13 for gifting 10 subscriptions. Thank you so much. That doesn't show up in our rants thing later. So I wanted to make sure that we said thank you before moving on, because otherwise I probably would have forgotten. So thank you so much. But it was Jordan shared the thread. It wasn't his thread, but 17th Special Operations, some special operations group put up a thread analyzing Q from a communications and kind of level of centralization, level of control, analyzing the cadence of the communications of specifically the Q post, and not all the comms around the Q post, just the Q posts, right? Just the actual deployments, and found like 92-93% consistency. The key takeaways from that, and the analytics on that, they lay out their methodology and everything. The analytics, I think, are pretty solid. I didn't personally verify their work. I didn't check their work, but their the methodology that they lay out is good. And I think my key takeaway from reading that thread, and you said you did read it, right?
I read
some of it. Yeah. It's pretty long.
Yeah.
But my key takeaway is that there's definitely a military operation, and people responded very predictably. The way that they designed the operation and the responses that they wanted to get out of people in that operation went according to plan, is what my takeaway. And I'm not a military person or anything like that, but I did run communications programs for 20 years, communication and change programs. And so I think that based on the analysis of the messaging and all of those kinds of things, and I'm not one of the people that says that Q made people complacent. I don't think it did. The most involved people that I know at the local level in my world are Q people.
Yeah,
I don't believe that it made people complacent, but it did. If you believe those analytics and just take like one step of reading into what it might mean, it guided the public. It guided, and people who would be inclined to tear down whatever they're doing. If you are doing a continuity of government devolution style operation, you have to account for the unknown, right? The people. And so, anyway, I thought that was really interesting. But recognizing that, and that's a very extreme example, right? That's macro military operation being run on the whole nation. But when you realize that level of sophistication is involved in the communications around this season of our lives, then it becomes more, I think, palatable to think that, well, President Trump might be saying something that sounds stupid so that they swarm him and mob him. I said to Brian last night, the media crucifying Trump is often the point, because we get disclosure through that. We get new information, and they usually end up tripping over their own dicks when they do that process.
Exactly right.
So
because if he delivered all those messages perfectly, like a very polished politician, they would just ignore the message and not play the clip, and they would focus their attention on places where they can feel like they can hurt him. Right. Yeah. So he makes those opportunities for them. He baits them into those opportunities by creating the opportunities, quote unquote, to hurt him within the messaging. And so then the message gets conveyed through their stupid coverage. And if you would share my screen, because I think it's worth just highlighting this. This is that New York Post article you mentioned. And the headline is, Trump mortifies ABC News reporter with scathing remark on why he was picked for highly sought interview. And Trump says, "Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know you're doing the interview," Trump said. "I picked you because, frankly, I'd never heard of you."
I know. Yeah, that was the video.
I picked you, but you're not being very nice, is what he said next.
We'll play when we transition from domestic to foreign. We'll play another clip from that video. But that actually was the clip that started, Brian and I going back and forth about this, is that he's talking about when he says, "I picked you because, I didn't know who you were," or however he phrases that. It's at the end of that MS-13 exchange. Liz Harrington posted that on X, if anybody wants to see the full exchange. And
the last thing I'll say, just on like what that article was trying to say about us, about like Trump's approval rating being down or whatever, MAGA being black pill, whatever they're trying to convey. That is absolutely not true. We love Trump. We love what he's doing. I see what his plan. Like I see on the grand scheme what I think he's trying to piece together internationally. Like that's where I focus my attention. I see it all coming together. Obviously, I don't know the details or read in on it, but the big movements I see in place. That doesn't mean we don't criticize individuals in the administration. Like we are still going to scrutinize
100%.
people. We're still going to criticize. We're still going to question things. We're still going to ask for accountability. It doesn't mean that we're complacent and we sit back and we just wait for things to be spoon fed to us. So those are two different things, and it requires
right?
it requires a nuanced adult worldview in order to do that. And the media are a bunch of children, and so they try to conflate all that stuff.
Yeah, it's about the idea for us. And I think I can say this for everyone that is a Badlands host. It's about the ideas. Yeah. I like the cabinet members, right? The Trump team, I think, is doing a great job. I think that we're only 100 days in, and I know people are like, oh, you said that we're only a week, and then we're only a month, and then we're only 2 months, and now you're like only the first 100 days. First 100 days is not a lot of time. 100 days is not a lot of time. And President Trump has already blown out of the water all of Joe Biden's metrics for 4 years in the first 100 days. If you think that we are, if you want us to be able to get to a golden age, you should very much be appreciating how quickly they're moving and how comprehensively, right? It's not like, well, we're going to do immigration and then we'll move on and do the economy and then we'll move on and do, agriculture. They're doing all of the things at the same time. Their enemies are on their heels, can't figure out how to effectively combat what's going on. We'll talk about a little bit of that here in a minute when we get into the court, some of the court stuff. But that's the key takeaway. And 100 days, I was reading an article. I don't think it made it in here. I think it might be in the brief. That 100 days is like this arbitrary time frame. It's an arbitrary milestone that every president thinks they need to hit, but it doesn't really mean anything. That's not true. In any behavioral change effort, your first 90 days, first 100 days is critical. And if you don't hit certain milestones by the end of it, you're probably your change effort is probably not going to succeed. That's been studied repeatedly. It is the milestone in post-merger acquisitions and large-scale change and transformation projects. You're looking at very tight timeframes to see if you can move enough of the mind share of your targeted individuals, right here, the nation in this sense, but in a project, the target population whose behavior you're trying to change. 100 days is really important. 90 days, 100 days is a really important time frame, and they are crushing it. So just finally on this Garcia story, I want to make sure people know what this says. So Edwin Diego, I think, Ramos, and it's handwritten, so forgive me, versus Jennifer Vasquez Sura. Motion for an affidavit that's for emergency hearing comes now. Self-represented plaintiff defendant and moves this honorable court to set this matter for an emergency hearing on custody, visitation, and support for the reasons as followed. The undersigned party is acting to safeguard the children who are now in the physical custody of Jennifer Vasquez Sura. The children are in serious danger at this time because she tried to kill herself and she left the kids with 11 year to take care of. And then I'm afraid of my kids' lives. I'm afraid my kids' lives are in danger because she is dating a gang member. I know these facts to be true because I was there and the police was there too. I have made the following attempt to notify Jennifer. Her response: the court can't give you custody of the kids because that therapist told me.
Okay. Yeah. The yesterday I was doing Badlands Live in the afternoon, and had the hearing playing in the background where they're trying to the stuff we were talking about yesterday, emotional blackmail, trying to make you feel guilty.
Always.
Like, we have to have due process to make sure every person we're sending is actually a criminal. Any person who is in the United States, I don't care if they're 1 year old, if they are here illegally, they are a criminal. And if they're 1 year old, then their parents are criminals for bringing them here. So
And
that
they're
is
also
how that
criminals
works.
for
That doesn't
being
mean the
here.
1 year old is going to have a criminal record for the rest of their life. It just means they have to leave the United States. Period. Paragraph. It's that simple. Are you a citizen of the United States? If not, have you immigrated legally? If not, goodbye. There's nothing more to talk about. I don't care if you're a gangbanger. Like, if you're a gangbanger, you need to be hunted down anyway. But like, those people should be prioritized. Trump said they were going to prioritize those people. We're going to go after the gangbangers first.
Yeah.
But any person who is here illegally has to go. And then once they go back to their home country, they can then apply for citizenship and go through the process like every other person who went through it. And it's so insane that we have to sit here and have those discussions. But somebody in the chat, what triggered me to say that was that said that Congress is totally useless. 100% agree. I think Congress is totally useless. They've accomplished nothing in the past 100 days. It's been all Trump. It's been all through executive action, executive orders. I'm fine with that for now. Long term, we need to have something a little more solid, because anything done via executive order can be undone via executive order. So we need to have everything fixed. But of course, that's going to require getting all the traitors, criminals, and sociopaths out of Congress, which is probably not going to happen overnight. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I will say this, going back to the first point in the first story we covered, the Republican Party is trying to draft off of Trump right now. They're trying to snuggle up next to him and be like, and get all the shine that he's getting right now. And they want to take it in and be like, well, it's the GOP doing all this for you. The Republicans are the ones saving you from the Democrats. Bullshit. The Republicans are the enemy. We have to recognize that. They did everything they could to keep Trump out of office. They deployed Ron DeSanctimonious. They did everything they could not to have Trump back. Okay. So no, they're the enemy. The Democrat Party is a dead carcass on the beach, you know, a bloated whale on the beach, a beached whale. We don't even need to focus on them at this point. All the focus should be on the traitors in the Republican Party who are ultimately long-term going to subvert Trump. They're saying nice things right now, but they're going to subvert Trump long-term.
Yeah. I mean, spot on. I'm looking for a thread on this DHS thread that came out, because here I found it. Okay. So the latest story is that he's deporting the 2-year-old citizens and 4-year-olds with cancer. Have you heard this angle yet? Yeah. So it's the emotional blackmail is what is pretty much all that they have. Now, these children, right? There's 3 children to 2 mothers. One of them reportedly has cancer and is fighting cancer. One of them's 2, one of them's 11, I think. And the parents are here unlawfully. Their children, I guess, were born here, and so they're U.S. citizens. But here's the thing:
they're anchor babies, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure, but that and I think we're going to see that challenged up to the Supreme Court when it comes to birthright citizenship, because President Trump has challenged the birthright citizenship. However, it is the acceptable, right? The acceptable standard and norm right now is that anchor babies are citizens, that there's no contention there. I think there, possibly is contention. We'll see that litigated. But regardless, the children are their parents. And children can't make asylum claims. These children don't have to make an asylum claim. They're U.S. citizens. But children also can't say no at 2, 4, 7 years old. I don't want to go with my parents. And the parents wanted to take their children with them, which in my opinion makes them sound like way better parents than I probably would have thought they were otherwise. Right.
Yeah.
Because there's no way I'm leaving my kids.
Hell
if
no.
I'm being deported, which, it's possible. at least from Colorado.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they're coming with me. There's no universe in which I'm leaving my kids behind, whether they're citizens or not. And the outrage on this thing is like, okay, do you want the family separated? Are you saying that you want the U.S. government to intervene and tell a parent, no, you cannot have your child because your child is a U.S. citizen and therefore we have your child? Because if you're doing that, then that's a complete 180 from Elian Gonzalez and how that case was decided. Children don't have the ability to make claims, immigration claims outside of in opposition to their parents, unless I would think they're making some sort of abuse claim as well, or, unsafe. I can't be with them because it's not safe for me. None of that's happening. These kids live with their parents. Their parents are being deported. And as Tom Homan said, families can be deported together. You know how just foaming at the mouth the media is over the idea that Trump had deported a child.
Yeah,
getting treated for cancer.
Yeah, for sure. And the underlying argument there that's not really reaching the surface quite yet, hopefully it does, is that they're looking at this as wards of the state. They want the children to be owned by the government, become wards of the state. And Americans are not really familiar with this concept, but it's very, very in places like Sweden.
Some Americans are. I think low-income Americans are certainly familiar with the concept of wards of the state.
Yeah, but in places like Sweden, you can be over the age of 18 and still be considered a ward of the state, where the government can come and impose itself on you if you aren't.
Oh, like Britney Spears.
If you aren't checking the boxes, like if you ever seen that movie, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that girl in the, it's a great movie. I recommend it. But the main character in the movie, she's obviously over 18. I think she's 20 in the movie. And she is a ward of the state, and she's forced by the government of Sweden to meet with like this psychologist who's sexually abusing her like every week. And it's like, that is what life is like in a socialist government, where the government owns the children, where the families don't own the children, the government owns the children. And that's what they're pushing for. That's what ultimately both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are pushing for, that because they're all communists, they're all socialists, they all come from that leftist worldview. The modern Republican Party was founded by Leon Trotsky in 1972. Bill Kristol's father and his friends, former Democrats, turned into Republicans. Charlie Kirk posted this morning about his lifetime mentor, David Horowitz, was a committed Marxist until he was my age, into his 30s. And then all of a sudden he stopped being a Marxist and became
we just stopped.
Yeah.
Just completely changed.
I mean, imagine somebody being my age, being a committed Marxist, and then waking up one day and being like, oh, I'm a Republican now.
That's not how that works.
This is the leadership of the quote unquote Republican Party. This is Charlie Kirk we're talking about. This is Bill Kristol. This is all the people who tell you that we are the future of the Republican Party. And they're admitting that they are former communists.
Yeah. Yeah. And present Prussians. Yeah. So let's check out this thread from Homeland Security on this story, because they are setting the record straight. Once again, the media is peddling a false narrative to demonize our enforcement agents. The claim that U.S. citizens are being deported is false. In both of these cases, the mothers had final order of deportation. Rather than separate their families, ICE asked the mother if they wanted to be removed with their children, or if they wanted ICE to place their children with someone safe that the parent designates. Both mothers chose to deport with their children. Jenny Colina Lopez Viela, I think, because it's an AA, right? So it's like a yeah sound. Illegally entered the U.S. 3 times. Her and her daughter were given final orders of removal in March of 2020. When she was taken into ICE custody in April 2025, she chose to bring her daughter, an American citizen, with her to Honduras. And this, I think, is the one that had an 11-year-old kid as well. The 11-year-old kid is not a citizen, but the 2-year-old is a citizen. Rachel Alex Morales Valle, or Valley, entered the country illegally and was released into the interior in 2013. She was given a final order of deportation in February. She was given a final order of deportation in 2015. 10 years later, in February 2025, she was arrested in Louisiana for speeding, driving without a license, driving without insurance. When she was taken into ICE custody in April 2025, she chose to bring both children, who are American citizens, with her to Honduras. We take our responsibility to protect children seriously, and will continue to work with federal law enforcement to ensure that children are safe and protected. Parents who are here illegally can take control of their departure through a CBP Home app. The Trump administration is giving parents illegally in this country a chance to take full control of their departure and self-deport, with the potential ability to return the legal right way and come back to live the American dream. It's free and available for all mobile devices. So this is, I think, a really good point. No illegal criminal invading migrants are living in a state of fear of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? They all know if you're here illegally, you're going to be deported, right? That's the plan. Now you can take control of that, demystify it, and make it a very orderly process by using the CBP Home app. If you don't, then you're probably going to be in, a state of anxiety and everything, but that's kind of a you problem. That's something you chose. But I really, really don't want to leave. Sorry, them's the breaks.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right, so let's move on. We've now did almost an hour on the border. Ghost, it's probably a good thing that you and I don't have a regular show.
It'd be like a 3 or 4 hour news show.
It would be like 3 or 4 hours.
John's biggest nightmare.
All right, so this is the story that's taken the collective mind by storm. U.S. recession warning. Atlanta Fed's GDP now predicts negative growth. The Atlanta Fed's GDP Now model predicts negative 2.7% growth, sparking concerns of a U.S. recession in 2025. Economists expect mixed Q1 GDP results, with forecasts ranging from 0.3 to 2.4% growth amid stagflation fears. The official Q1 GDP report drops tomorrow, with markets breaking for volatility and possibly negative print. So Zero Hedge came out, and I don't have this pulled up, but Zero Hedge came out today and said the Atlanta Fed is off by 2.4%, meaning it would be, a retraction of 0.3% instead of 2.7%. With all of the investments, and ostensibly some of those have gotten started, I think a negative 2.7 sounds off, but hell do I know. I'm not an economist. We'll see. Jobs report drops tomorrow. We'll see what's happening, and our GDP report rather drops tomorrow. So we'll see. But that there's a bunch of, again, radicals foaming at the mouth, hoping that the economic numbers are terrible so they can freak out on Trump.
Yeah. But again, like you and I were talking before the show, the first Q1 is up until March, right? It's January, February, March. Trump took office on January 20th. So even if you go to the end of March, that's 70 days. I mean, nothing that he does, he can move heaven and earth in those first 70 days, which he did in a lot of ways. He certainly signaled that was happening with the tariff announcement and all that. None of that is going to show up in a like economic report, because it takes time for that to actually impact the economy. So, and
I think that's right. I also think that President Trump very intentionally broke some things. I don't believe so yesterday, Scott Bessent joined the White House press briefing. And during that briefing, he talked about how he believes the economy is going to be unleashed. The tariffs are going to start to have an impact. The investments that are pouring in are going to start to have an impact by Q3 or Q4. And so when we get to Q3 and Q4, there is no universe in which anybody can say, well, this is Trump's just taking credit for Biden's economy. There's no universe. They've gone so hard in the paint on him and criticized every single maneuver. The administration keeps going forward. It's very much Trump's economy. There's no blaming anybody else for it. And that also means that nobody else can take credit for it when it inevitably roars. And I believe it will.
Yeah. And it's important to remember, because I looked into this when Burning Bright and I did Righteous Rush on Book of Trump a few weeks ago, because we were talking about the tariffs and all that. And during the first Trump administration, Trump signed, he actually didn't really implement that many tariffs. Which is funny because there was a lot of talk of it. He threatened to implement tariffs, which is what Kevin O'Leary, I mentioned yesterday, was saying in his debate with Steve Mnuchin, is that this is all just part of the deal. He's threatening tariffs, and going back to the ciphers that Oak helped us develop on Monday night, that would be a feint. He engaged and then he retreated, right? Yeah. He engaged and said, I'm doing the tariffs. Oh, wait, 90-day pause. And now everyone's lining up to negotiate and cut a deal with him because they don't want the tariffs. Yeah. So back in the first Trump administration, he imposed tariffs in summer and fall of 2018. That's when the tariffs went into place. It was aluminum, steel on China. Really, China was the only one who got tariffs. And it was $34 billion worth of Chinese goods, like a 15% tariff. It was pretty modest compared to what we're looking at now. There was a lot of threats of tariffs against other countries that never materialized because we negotiated with them. And then we saw an explosion, like a good explosion in the economy in 2019, the best economic year on record in 2019, because of that little thing that Trump did relative to what he's doing now. And so I think we're going to see the same thing happen. And like you said, like Scott Bassett said, it's going to happen a lot sooner and a lot quicker than people probably realize.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that it is not so many times when you get a new president, this does not apply to President Trump, but pretty much every other one in my adult lifetime, which is, Bush and Obama.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, science and art when they come in, and it's like, well, you have Janet Yellen out here talking about the science of the economy, and then you've got, kind of, we're doing some things, and we're gonna mess with, entitlements, we're gonna forgive all the student aid, but we're gonna raise these taxes over here, so that's gonna take care of it. And it feels like they're making it up, like prior to the Trump season. President Trump isn't making any of this up. And he's not running a Keynesian economic model either. He's using sound principles that trying to bring about sound money, trying to bring about a more stabilized but fair economy that puts America first. Our U.S. economy should put Americans first. That shouldn't be controversial. It is, because
it's very controversial,
we have global communists all over the place, but
especially in the Republican Party. The Republicans are actually the most controversial about it. And Rand Paul is the proof of that. Rand Paul is livid that we are not allowing slave labor to access our markets. He thinks it's appalling that we would not allow oligarchs to go to places like China and Thailand and exploit those people and create slave farms and sweatshops and to sew up the Nikes and then send the Nikes back here to be sold for $700 a pair.
Rand Paul is appalled.
Yeah that's right.
So we'll see what happens. As we mentioned, today is the cabinet meeting. They should be talking, I believe, about foreign policy pretty extensively, and the accomplishments of foreign policy in the first 100 days. So tune in to Badlands Live after the broadcast. Well, tune in to Breaking History after this broadcast, and then Badlands Live after that. All right, let's move on to some court stuff. Democrat negotiators say Trump has targeted at least $430 billion in funding, and all the people said, well, that seems low. Top Democrat funding negotiators in the House and Senate on Tuesday published a tracker they say is aimed at documenting federal funding blocked under President Trump, while accusing his administration of targeting at least $430 billion in funds. It is crazy to me that Senator Patty Murray and Representative Rosa DeLauro, she's the one that looks like Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction, that those two are advertising for President Trump effectively, it seems like. They released the tracker early Tuesday in an effort, they say, is intended to shine a light on President Trump's vast illegal funding freeze and how it's hurting people in every zip code in America. This is literally what we voted for, is for them to stop wasting money. And Patty Murray and Rosa DeLauro are freaking out about it. The tracker was compiled by Democrat appropriations staffs, so you can just throw it out because it's definitely not accurate, and details what the offices say is a minimum amount of funds believed to be frozen, canceled, or that the Trump administration is fighting to block in court. It so far highlights 114 programs that Democrats say have seen their funds frozen, canceled, or terminated in the president's first 100 days in office. That includes what Democrats say is roughly $1 billion in funding for Head Start, gone, frozen, $400 million blocked funding for AmeriCorps, AmeriCorps state and national grants, and $2.4 billion frozen funding for wildfire hazardous fuels management, $15 million held back from the Social Security Administration research. I mean, Social Security Administration research? Like, have they researched how many fake people are collecting Social Security? Apparently not. But they're upset that they're losing $15 million in funding. White House didn't comment to the Hill on this. But yeah, I mean, I think I think 430 billion is low. I think we need to cut a hell of a lot more. And I think that usually if they're freaking out about a project or a person, it's because that project or person is meaningful to them. So we should dig in a little bit more.
I'm sorry, share my screen real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
These
Yeah.
people think that like when Trump does all this stuff that they point to him, they're like, do you see the way he's talking to us? Do you see the way he's ripping apart the government? And my response to that is this.
Sure as hell am, Chip. I love the way they're talking to you.
I love the way that Donald Trump talks to them. I love the way that he breaks all of their toys and just smashes them on the floor and then looks at them to see what their reaction is. And then the more they react, he goes back into the toy chest, pulls another one out and just smashes it on the floor. That is what I voted for. I voted
100%.
for him to destroy everything that you hold dear, deep state. That is exactly what I'm. And the more I think about it, you know, they present these fraudsters, the people who are like exploiting the social security thing as like these individuals. I'm sure there are probably plenty of those people out there. The individuals who are, you know, collecting on a 300-year-old person, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like the oligarchs, if it's, you know, people who we would recognize, like who have figured out how to game the system and have networks that are basically collecting this money and then putting it into like a slush fund, maybe even like the State Department or CIA. And then they're basically just like grafting that money and then putting it into bank accounts that ultimately land in places they want them to land. Maybe not their personal bank account, but other bank accounts that they can then use to make more money. So all of that needs to be run down. We need to investigate everything, and specifically the people in the government.
And like, you know, you mentioned the basically laundering of the money. The family member NGOs is apparently a really big thing that keeps coming up, that in these programs, you'll find a familial connection to somebody that's voting for the program. This shit happens at the state level too. So don't think it's just the federal Congress, guys. This is how the criminal slimeball politicians operate since the beginning of time.
5 years ago, 5 years ago, when I was like helping out with campaigns in Virginia, like I was helping, like going against that prosecutor I mentioned yesterday. There were senators in Virginia, state senators, who I like looked into all of their financing, because that's all published online, it's all open source, and they were getting like $1 million from Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So it's like Planned Parenthood, like, and then they were signing bills at the state level that was giving. Or maybe what it was is they signed $1 million bill to give $1 million to Planned Parenthood, and then Planned Parenthood made like $100,000 donation to their campaign.
Yeah.
So it's like the exact same thing that you see at the federal level, just happening at the state level.
And it's plausible deniability, right? So the most benevolent reading is that we're not laundering money, but we are, you know, running it through a few things to make it more, to give us more plausible deniability. I mean, I think it's money laundering.
Yeah.
I
you may not like it, but it's totally legal. Like, it may not be ethical, quote unquote, but it's totally legal. Like, that's the gray area that they operate in. And it's just absolutely despicable.
Yeah. The House Ethics Committee said what we were doing was fine.
Yeah.
All right. Can we investigate the House Ethics Committee?
Yeah, please.
No.
I would love
They
to.
investigate themselves like everyone else in government.
Yeah. And that's the great part about the Anon era, like the era we're in right now, is all these investigations. We don't even trust the government to do them anymore. It's just open source. It's like people collectively online just sharing and comparing notes. And who was it? Somebody in a congressional hearing even said that the other day, where they were like, a lot of these like a lot of the areas where Elon is operating, it was during the Doge hearing. He was saying a lot of the direction that Doge is getting is coming from places like X, where people are posting, like that Data Republican account is posting, hey, here's what I found, might want to look here. And then Elon like reposts it, and then everyone puts eyeballs on it. So that's like crowdsourcing investigations. I'm totally down with that. I think that's a great method of exposing truth.
Yeah. Agreed. Data 12 asked the question, does anybody know how Ash is doing with the appeal by selective NGOs? So there's two separate parts of this case. One is they appealed and we're defending against that appeal. That decision is expected at any minute. And it's GART week. and usually something at every single GART, something happens in my case. So fingers crossed we could get an answer this week, but that's all, all the back and forth motions process, everything is done on that one. On the appeal to overturn the Christiansburg standard to make court, really what we're trying to do is narrow the Christiansburg standard to only apply to the government, so that the NGOs might have special equitable considerations if they're suing the government, but they should not have special equitable considerations if they're suing other private parties. Certainly not if they're just making it all up. So that is in the early stages, and the brief is due, I think, in like 2 weeks, I think. So we are, as I've mentioned before, continuing to truck forward. We fell short of our fundraising goal, but we've worked out with the attorneys a plan to keep moving forward and to be able to bring this. We are still raising money to try and cover the gap, but givesendgo.com/stop NGO lawfare if you're able to help. We really, really do appreciate it. Speaking of NGOs, we covered this oral argument on Badlands Live when it happened. Judge orders Trump administration to restore $12 million for pro-democracy Radio Free Europe. What? Why? Federal judge on Tuesday ordered the Trump administration to restore $12 million that Congress appropriated for Radio Free Europe, a pro-democracy media outlet at risk of going dark for the first time in 75 years. Who will spread the Prussian propaganda? I don't know.
75 years. There's that number again. It's like whenever you hear that something is 75 to 80 years old, meaning it's post-World War II, you can just almost assume that it's something really nefarious. That would be, 1950? And for those who aren't aware, National Security Act 1947, signed by Truman, created the CIA. The NATO was founded, I think, in 1949. Television, the first television broadcast was 1951. The guys who were appointed as the heads of all of the broadcast networks were all psychological warfare officers from World War II.
Yeah, and I just realized this is not the same case. So we did cover a case about funding for Radio Free Europe like a couple weeks ago. This is a different case because this is still in the lower court. So maybe this will get fast tracked up. We shall see. U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth also tucked a lesson on the three branches of government inside Tuesday's ruling, cautioning that the system of checks and balances established by the U.S. Constitution must remain intact if the nation is going to continue to thrive. Lamberth granted the temporary restraining order for the U.S. Agency for Global Media to disperse the money for April 2025. They're getting $12 million a month. What?
Wait, a month or a year?
Says orders to pay 12 million, and then it says orders to disperse the money for 2025.
Wow. Okay.
That might be a logical leap, but
I mean, maybe they're saying you need to disperse the money in April 2025 for the whole year. I don't know, but that is something that should be run down. $12 million a month would be insane. That's obviously a money laundering thing.
We should check that out.
Yeah.
I'll maybe try to do that this afternoon. Here's what the judge wrote. In interviews, podcasts, op-eds, people from both inside and outside the government have variously accused the courts, myself included, of fomenting a constitutional crisis, usurping the Article 2 powers of the presidency, undercutting the popular will, or dictating how executive agencies can and should be run. These notions reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of the federal judiciary and the Constitution itself. Reasonable people can reach different conclusions in complicated legal disputes such as this. Also, Lamberth, you don't have any power over the president, so suck it. I think that there has been a lot of critics that have made exactly those arguments. And also, every time that I see the word judiciary, I want to say it like Chuck Grassley. Judiciary.
Yeah, what's really funny about that, so like this Radio Free Europe, whatever the hell that is, I'm sure if we looked into it, it would something really, really nefarious. But when I did last week, like the Book of Trump thing, I didn't really expect this to happen. But as I'm like looking into all these different subjects, I'm like learning a lot about like other things that I didn't think that I'd be learning about. But like Assad, for example, I did the episode on Assad last week. In 2000, he comes into power in 2000. He's like he's studying to become a surgeon in London. His brother dies, who's supposed to become the heir to his father. So then he gets pulled out of med school, brought back to Syria, and he's like plugged in to be the guy. And so he's trying to, and I know from my conversation with Matt Ehret, because Matt's done a lot of research on this, he like focused on economy, and he was trying to get like this economic union going, not like a EU thing, but just he was trying to build railroads all over the Middle East. And all of a sudden in 2005, you have the State Department coming in there, and all these NGOs are flooding the zone in Syria with election integrity issues. They want to monitor the elections. They are passing out pamphlets about registering people to vote. They want to hold all these snap elections. I even found an interview with a CNN reporter in Assad, where the CNN reporter is warning Assad, the Bush administration is doing this to you, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know." He's and then I read reports of Assad shutting down these kind of these foreign radio and media outlets that were like foreign funded, that were, small little outlets that are operating in Syria. And that's why they call him a dictator, is because he was shutting down outlets that were being funded by like the State Department that were trying to subvert and like destabilize his country. And the reason they were trying to do that is because he wasn't cooperating with like the global hegemony. And so like, all the things that we went through in 2020, he was going through in 2005, and like it was the same people doing it to him that were doing it to us, our own government. It was insane, and so I'm just like, this is what they do. They fund this crap, these outlets, and then the outlets then tell the people that how to think and how to vote.
Agreed. So I of course we're over my time for the domestic stuff. So I'm going to fly through a couple things because I do think they're important.
Cool.
And there is no Badlands Daily tomorrow. I don't think there's the live one on Friday from Garb, but I don't think that there's one tomorrow. So I want to make sure we hit this. But I will tell you that the multiple stories that I had of middle-aged, crazy-ass white chicks raping young boys, I'm going to leave those off because we don't have time. And also there's no way to do that quietly with you, like shortly in a short time frame.
Yeah.
There's no way to hit all those stories in a short time with you and me, because we both get way too ragey about that topic. So we're going to go through and just do like a quick kind of lightning round here. Hannah Dugan, the judge that was harboring the migrant, took him through the jury door, tried to help him evade ICE capture. This was a guy who punched a woman 30 times in the face and then apparently beat the crap out of another woman that tried to come to her aid. She has been suspended. The Wisconsin Supreme Court voted to suspend her judgeship while she is, going through her prosecution and hopefully with, fingers crossed, her incarceration, because you can't do that. Next one, Sean Combs, P. Diddy says his lawyers rather say he might not have been mentally capable of the crimes he's alleged of because he was high. I was going to follow the law, but then I got high. Phoenix 13, another 10 subscriptions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really do appreciate it. Yeah. So he was too high to know that what he was doing. It was too high to know that I was raping them. Is what it is, a hell of a defense. And the court cartoonist is crushing it. It definitely looks like Diddy.
Yeah, it does.
Real quick. So this is a 2-minute clip. I'm going to read. This is from Fox News, Jesse Waters. And actually, I don't think that this is from Real Robert N, the summary here, and then we'll play the 2-minute clip, and then I'll hand it over to you. We'll talk about our incredible sponsor, and then I'll hand it over to you to do foreigner stuff. Confirmed CIA Director Gina Haspel conspired with OCCRP Adam Schiff and USAID to topple the U.S. government in 2019. This is the video clip. Let's take a listen.
You have this new piece on Substack that the USAID and the CIA helped orchestrate Trump's impeachment.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse, it's a crazy story. I mean, you might forget that,
shocking. Who
House
would
of
have known that was a thing?
Impeached President Trump
Breaking.
in December of 2019. Many people may not remember that it was a CIA analyst who was left over from the Obama White House who wrote the memo that led to the impeachment. It was all based on hearsay. The person had not actually been in the room with Trump. Nonetheless, this memo that he wrote relied heavily on a report done by an organization funded by USAID. In fact, its initial founding funding, I mean, now it's tens of millions of dollars, had gone into this group called the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, a name that's not very memorable, OCCRP, but it was basically created as an extension of the State Department and then of USAID. And as you know, Jesse, this is very serious to be involved in an effort to do regime change at home, as we've been discovering as the files have come out with what Elon Musk has been doing. We know that USAID was really about regime change abroad. It was a kind of public-facing part, regime change operation like CIA, but not covert, more overt. Well, now you see a similar blowback, just like they did censorship abroad and brought censorship tools back home. They were doing this sort of thing abroad, creating a predicate essentially for Trump's impeachment. So I think it's just one of many revelations that we'll see coming out in the next few weeks.
USAID was involved in regime change abroad and here at home. Very interesting.
Yep. I know that that's not a surprise to any of us. When you realize that the USAID was the can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I got a weird error message up at the top. When you realize that USAID is basically the CIA's slush fund, and that the CIA uses NGOs to accomplish a lot of the things that it can't do inside of government, then it all starts to make sense.
Yep.
Final story, and I've cut so much out of this. We just cut like 7 stories. Had to be done because we got to get out of here at a reasonable hour. U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey, this is Alina Habba, has announced an election integrity task force. I think this is really good. I wish it was nationwide. It is intended, you can see in here, to safeguard the protect the integrity of elections conducted in the District of New Jersey. This act, and I break it down in today's Badlands news brief. I give you kind of my thoughts on all of the aspects of this, badlands.substack.com. But the kind of high level message on this thing is it's pretty much targeting fake voters, fake ballots, either requiring cleaning up of voter rolls, heavy focus on the prosecution of election related crimes. And then, making sure that you're following the MVRA, which they are not. Most states, I don't think any state, maybe North Dakota, because North Dakota doesn't have voter registration. But aside from that, I don't think any state that has voter registration is compliant with the NVRA in totality. And so this is kind of a state level, it's not an executive order. It's a task force inside of the Department of Justice at the state level, still federal, but at the, in the state, in the field. I hope we see more of this. I hope it becomes a model and it's rolled out to all the U.S. attorney's offices, and that they're doing this kind of investigation in every state. It would make a big deal, a big difference here in Colorado. If you actually had somebody serving as a check on the voter rolls, on the election processes here. So I'm excited about it. You can read my entire breakdown of this order in today's Badlands news brief. Anything you want to say on that before we hit our next sponsor?
Well, that's exciting for New Jersey because I have family there. And so I was kind of along with them tracking their elections over the past 2 cycles. And it seemed like their elections were being stolen because the Republican was heavily winning. And then all of a sudden at the very end, the Democrat just eked it out. Right. So
always how it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in Canada too, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Let's talk about Field of Greens. I have been taking Field of Greens since a few weeks before Las Vegas Gart. I started taking, every day, the Field of Greens powdered drink as my breakfast, and then Field of Greens lean. And I'm thrilled with the results. I will continue taking it because I'm thrilled with the results. There's appetite, moderation in there. There's a lot of cravings are just gone for me. I don't know if that's part of it or if that's an ash specific feature, but I'm really, really pleased with it. Annual doctor checkups, labs, and blood work important to you. Why? Peace of mind, health stuff runs in your family, maybe. Honestly, I would do anything to not have to go to the doctor. That's a fact. So what should I do? Many say they are nervous about blood work and lab results. Just one simple lifestyle upgrade we can all make is Field of Greens. Enjoy a delicious glass of doctor-formulated Field of Greens each day, and you're going to feel amazing. Plus, your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. This Field of Greens customer wrote, "The best blood work I've had in a decade. My doctor said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Another said, "For the first time in years, my cholesterol numbers are normal." And this mom said, "After Field of Greens, my hair, nails, and energy and blood work are all better." I haven't gotten the blood work, but I can confirm that hair, nails, energy levels, in skin, brain fog, all kinds of things are better after I've been using Field of Greens. How can a fruit and vegetable drink promise better health? Well, each fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was doctor selected to support vital organs like heart, liver, kidneys, metabolism, immune system, and healthy blood cells. Let me get you started with 20% off and free shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use our code Badlands. Fieldofgreens.com, code Badlands, and highly recommend. Again, everybody's body is different. Everybody's results are going to be different. I'm, big fan of following the instructions on the packaging. I'm a little bit of a rule follower in that respect. So you're supposed to, with the lean, you're supposed to eat a breakfast and then take the lean capsules. My breakfast that I usually take is the Field of Greens drink, and
Nice.
it's worked out great for me. So
yeah, I do Field of Greens and Greek yogurt. So like protein filled Greek yogurt.
Oh,
So
that's
all.
nice.
Yeah, it's good.
That.
It's a good.
Caleb would like that too. He does a lot of yogurt.
Yeah. Plus, it's like it's got caffeine in it, so it's it's a good pick me up at certain times of the day.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, do us a favor and hit that thumbs up button, the heart button, the red pill button, wherever you're watching us. Please smash that like button. It helps us out quite a bit, and we certainly do appreciate it. With that, let's talk about foreigners.
Yes, we'll talk about foreigners. First, I actually wanted to start with this story because, as we were mentioning before, it's like criticism. Just because we believe in Trump and we love Trump, we still are going to criticize the government because it's the government and it deserves criticism. And what they're going to try, what the bad actors, the bad faith actors are going to try to convince you is that because Donald Trump is president, you shouldn't criticize anything the federal government's doing because that means you're criticizing Donald Trump. And that's just not true. And Michael Schellenberger, by the way, who was just on Jesse Waters in that clip we played, he recently admitted that like all the COVID stuff was a lie, and like the censorship was all actually happening. And so those guys have admitted that they got everything wrong 5 years ago, everything. And they're like, oh, I guess we did mess literally everything up, but we're going to get it right this time. So I don't trust any of those guys either. I guess I'm glad that they're talking about it, but they are not the tip of the spear, not even close. They are on the caboose. Even if they might be way back there doing a little hand crank on the train track. But anyway, G Money mentioned this last night on Only Land, so I went and looked it up, and it does appear to be true. Irish rap trio Kneecap, cut from major German music festivals, loses U.S. visa after anti-Israel statements at Coachella. So G Money was explaining how he was at Coachella, and I don't know if he was. I think he said he wasn't at this concert, but he didn't
see this band. I remember
he didn't see the band, but he heard about it, or maybe he showed up at the end or whatever. And so the TLDR is that they put up, I'm sure people saw it. We put it up last night. It was like a big sign that said in lights like F Israel, Free Palestine. Right. And I guess they had some sort of a message or maybe like a statement they made on stage, whatever. So regardless of what your political view is on that situation, these guys are, as far as I can tell, I don't know anything about them, not terrorists. They are artists, I guess, musicians. They're on stage. They're making a political statement. Certainly not a new development in American culture for musicians to make political statements from the stage. We've seen a lot of that since Donald Trump came around. But the day after they did this, they all lost their U.S. visas. They lost their U.S. booking agency. They've been kicked out of a lot of festivals apparently that they were scheduled to play at. And now the business stuff, like that's business, that private sector. So it is what it is. And when you make political statements, sometimes you're going to suffer business wise. But I want to focus on the fact that they lost their U.S. visa. The State Department pulled their visa because of this. And this kind of this is like drafting off of the alleged terrorists at these schools that are quote unquote supporting Hamas. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what the official narrative is. That's what the Trump administration says. I can't verify whether or not that's true. I haven't seen the materials. I mean, I would have expected them to kind of like publish the materials that these people were putting out if that was true, but maybe they will eventually. This obviously, though, is different because this was done out in the public, got a lot of publicity for doing it. And as far as I know, but they're not accusing these guys of being terrorists. They're just pulling their visa for making a political statement on stage at a U.S. concert. This is the Republicans doing this, by the way. The Republican Party is the one behind this. They're the ones pulling these guys' visas.
Do you know that?
Well,
like you have a.
Well, the Republicans are in charge of the federal government right now.
So Republican officials yes, Republican State Department. That was my question is like, did Rubio do this like, on his own, or was this, what was do we get any in the article? Do we get any information on the State Department's calculus? Because this is, as you're saying, straight up unlawful from a First Amendment constitutional standpoint.
Yeah. So it says the CAA, which is like a artist management group.
Yeah,
and
it's the CIA's talent agency.
Very nefarious.
Yeah.
Talk about like occult Satanism, like very, very deep in that organization. They put out statements saying that they were cutting ties with these guys. This other group, it says NECAP's U.S. booking agency, independent artist group, announced late last week the group is no longer its client. IAG, whose clients include Billy Joel and Metallica, did not specify the reason, but the move took place between the first and second weekends of Coachella, where NECAP stirred controversy with its anti-Israel remarks. IAG sponsored NECAP's U.S. work visas, which is a common practice for booking agencies and international acts, but since being dropped by the agency, it remains unclear how the band will play shows in the U.S. So I guess maybe it's a work visa they got through this talent agency. And because the talent agency is dropping them, they're losing their work visa. But so
that's different.
So that's a little different.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, if these guys are, I guess, international musicians that are playing Coachella, the fact that they're basically losing their ability to work in the United States and show up here to play a concert and then leave and go to Germany and play a concert there, they're not like living here. Because of a political statement seems a little odd. And I mean, maybe
hold on a second. Someone in the chat, and I'm not going to say your name, says all hate speech is wrong. All right. Let's define what falls into that category, because I went to federal court because election denialism was considered dangerous, intimidating speech. We do. And somebody else said the First Amendment is for citizens. Yeah, the absolute protections of the First Amendment are for citizens. As Ghost said at the top of this thing, these people don't have protection from the business impacts of their speech. None of us do, right? You can say things and your employer can get pissed and fire you. But the government shouldn't be able to do something to you as a result of that speech. Now, looking at this, it looks like potentially they lost their visas because they no longer had their sponsor. Their sponsor was their, and this, we would all support this if it was an H-1B visa holder, right? Mm-hmm. So, Sandeep comes over here to do some coding and he gets fired. Sandeep should go back, right? We'd all probably agree with that. I think this is kind of the same thing. It's reading as, I think it's a very important point to raise the questions about the First Amendment. But the reason that I interrupted you, and I apologize, but I got a little ragey there for a second. The protections over speech, hate speech is not a thing.
Yep.
There's no such thing as hate speech. There's speech you don't like, and there's certain groups of people that have wrapped those things into a category that protects them from criticism, and they get to persecute anybody that speaks out about them. That's also a violation of the First Amendment, FYI. But yeah, hate speech isn't a thing. And the second you give that a spot in your brain space, you put hate speech in there and you start trying to police hate speech. It's a damn slippery slope. All right, I apologize, Ghost.
once you do that, you're already a communist. It's not even a slippery slope. It's
Yeah,
like you've
100%.
already dove headfirst into communism, and you are you are a statist. You are somebody who worships the state and expects the state to protect you from words that hurt your feelings, and that's what hate speech ultimately is. And this would be a lot less. This would be more of a non-story if we didn't have the correlating events of like Pam Bondi and all these State Department people standing up and saying we're going to start going after people who criticize Israel and who say mean things about Israel. If that wasn't also happening concurrent to this, this would be much more of a non-story. But it's the fact that there is this hyper desperation move to clamp down, as they say in their words, clamp down on people who criticize Israel. And by the way, legislation in 39 or 40 states, Republican controlled states mostly, where they have expanded the definition of hate speech to include people who the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, which is
Christianity.
People who criticize Israel, the government of Israel, compare it to the Nazi Third Reich, and people who also say that Jesus was killed by Jews.
Yeah,
that's part which is written in the Bible. So
and a lot of our politicians just wholesale adopt that without even thinking it through, and certainly without explaining their position for why they support standards that make Christianity and make the gospel of Jesus Christ unlawful.
Yeah, and for those who aren't aware of this story from 2 years ago, this is like an autistic girl in Britain made this is like a pretty viral video, made a homophobic remark online, and the police came to her house, and her mother like filmed the police dragging her out of the house. A 16-year-old girl who was autistic.
She called the lady a lesbian.
Yeah,
looked like a lesbian.
Yeah, it's like she called the lady a lesbian or whatever, and dragged this girl out of the house screaming for her mother. 16-year-old autistic girl. And it's like that is the logical endpoint of where this all it begins with where we are right now, and it ends with that, with your children being dragged out of your house screaming for their parents to help them, and there's nothing you can do if you don't want to get shot or dragged off the jail yourself. And that is the logical endpoint, and ultimately what this is going to be about, in my opinion. I posted it yesterday. The same way that the Biden presidency destroyed the Republican Party. Republican Party is completely destroyed, in my opinion, completely destroyed. And we're just seeing the afterglow of it right now.
Taking forever to just get through its death rattle. I wish it would hurry up.
Yeah, in that same way, I think the Israel position that the Republican Party has that it can't back out of is going to be the undoing of the Republican Party, because ultimately what it equates to in political practice is the worship of government. It's the worship, and by worship I mean
not even our own government.
It's not even our own government. It's whatever the Israeli government wants to do. The Republican Party nods its head and says, "Yes, master, we will do that. Thy will be done." And when you operate that way, you are taking a secular entity, a material earthly master, you're elevating it on a pedestal, you're engaging in idolatry, but you're also worshiping government, and you're elevating government above the people, and that is inherently anti-American. I do think that's what's going to be the undoing of the Republican Party, and I do think that there's a reason that Trump has put some of these people in place, because I think we're going to see Trump be at odds with some of them. Maybe we'll see, but that's already kind of starting to come to the surface. But to that point, I wanted to then we're going to go to Russia before we go full blown Middle East. But this story is really, really interesting, because I've been somebody for the past year and a half articulating how Hamas does not equal Palestine. Here is the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, who I have long said that I think him and Trump are in like a secret sort of like handshake agreement that Trump's going to help him. I mean, it wasn't even secret. Trump said it openly in 2017. I'm going to help you become the person to make Palestine an actual country. And he said this from 7 days ago, Abbas calls Hamas sons of dogs. He called them sons of bitches, and demands release of Gaza hostages. There's a video that I will play, and I'll just read what he says because he's speaking in Arabic. But he says, every day there are hundreds of deaths. Why? They don't want to hand over the American hostage. You sons of bitches. Hand over what you have and get us out of this. Don't give Israel an excuse. Don't give them an excuse. Hamas has given the criminal occupation excuses to commit its crimes in the Gaza Strip. The most prominent being the holding of hostages. Why have they taken them hostage? I'm the one paying. I'm the one paying for this. Our people are paying the price for Israel. Have you seen how much the number of dead Palestinians there are has grown since 2007, when Hamas came into power? We are paying the price every day. My brother, just hand them over. And then I guess we can go ahead and we'll go ahead and shift to this other story, which is Sarah Netanyahu revealing publicly that. Says, this is the Times of Israel. It says Sarah Netanyahu says fewer than 24 hostages are still alive in Gaza. Hostages families demand to know whether there's new info after. And remember, I think the official number is they're believed to be like 55, something around there. Hostage families demand to know whether there's new info after PM's wife says figures cited by Netanyahu is too high at a meeting in which he nearly forgot to mention captives. Sarah Netanyahu on Monday said the number of hostages thought to be still alive in Gaza was lower than the official figure of 24.
So still alive. That's
okay.
The number.
Okay. So the official figure now is 24. I guess it was 55 a few weeks ago. They released.
I thought the 55 included dead ones, though, because this is the first time that I can recall dead people being referred to as hostages. It's like the bodies of hostages, but they keep calling them hostages, which makes the number ambiguous, right? Are we talking about 55? Are we talking about 24? Who's alive? Who's dead? We don't know.
Very ambiguous. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it says the actual number of alive is lower than the official figure of 24 during a meeting with her. Okay, so maybe the official figure is 24 are thought to be alive, but she's saying it's actually lower. So during a meeting in which her husband, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, appeared to have forgotten the captives altogether while speaking about Israel's military achievements, the comment by Sarah Netanyahu, which sparked outrage among hostage families on Tuesday, was based on partial classified information that was recently relayed to cabinet ministers, the Khan public broadcaster reported. The premier's wife has previously sued Channel 12 for reporting that she leaked state secrets related to attacks in Iran and the assassination in September of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. So yeah, she's actually been convicted of one felony related to misusing funds back in 2019, and I think she's actually facing another felony charge now. But basically, it's like I think the 2019 charge was she used $50,000 of catering to for food, even though they have like private chefs and all that stuff at the prime minister. Yeah, I don't really care about that stuff. So low hanging fruit. Yeah. It's like that's like silly stuff.
A politician overspent money. I'm shocked. I tell you.
I know. Like that stuff is so silly. Like I completely agree with that. I do, by the way, kind of subscribe now to the our boy Netanyahu idea. That
I heard that.
Yeah. Although my caveat though is that I don't think it's like Netanyahu being read in on anything. I think it's a series of events that have occurred since 2018 that Trump has orchestrated, where Netanyahu is now backed into a corner and Trump is like his only friend and the only person. It seems like Trump has kept Netanyahu in power despite making really disparaging remarks about him over the years, like in random moments. And the reason that I think
Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio and others, right?
Yeah. And the reason I think he's actually done this is because of I can't recall if I shared this on this show last week or not, but these other two guys who would be otherwise prime minister right now, Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett. One of them, Naftali Bennett, is considered like 10 degrees more right wing than Netanyahu, and Lapid is considered like centrist, kind of left. And both of them, they were both prime minister between 2021 and 2022. They like shared the prime ministership. And that's what forced Netanyahu, in order to reclaim it back from them, he had to go make an alliance with these people who weren't even allowed in the Knesset because they were so radical. They had these like Jewish supremacist views, and he had to reverse a law in order to allow that caveat for them to come back to the Knesset. That's like Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich, the Meir Kahane acolytes. And so now you have Netanyahu in power with this really, really like radical cabinet, because part of the deal was, if we're going to support you, you're going to make us the most powerful men in Israel. And what I've noticed is that these other guys, Lapid and Bennett, they're pretty moderate on like every issue, like even a two-state solution. The one thing though, where they actually are criticizing Netanyahu and are like, if we were in power, this would be different, is a war with Iran. Is that they've said, we need to attack Iran right now. Right now, we need to attack Iran. And so I wonder if Netanyahu wasn't in power right now, and one of these other guys were, would the public kind of be docile, like asleep to the whole issue, and then all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're at war with Iran? With Netanyahu in office, it's like he's such a villain, because I would compare him to Hillary Clinton or George Bush. He's like the George Bush of Israel. All eyes are like on Israel, and all eyes are like watching it, and everybody sees this coming. And to that point, we had the meeting last weekend with Steve Witkoff and the Iranians. And so here's the Jerusalem Post. Negotiations between Iran and Israel likely to end in agreement, official tells Post. The Israeli official who spoke to the Post stated that they believe that Trump's 60-day deadline to reach an agreement would eventually be extended. Israel estimates that the negotiations between the United States and Iran are likely to conclude with an agreement, an Israeli official told the Jerusalem Post on Monday. The official clarified that Israel does not yet know whether the agreement will align with its demands, namely the complete dismantling of uranium enrichment facilities, or if it will resemble the previous nuclear agreement, which Israel considers a bad agreement. U.S. President Donald Trump said that the nuclear talks with Iran were going very well on Sunday night. I think a deal will be reached. We'll have something without needing to start bombing, Trump told reporters. Another round of talks between Iran and the U.S. was scheduled for this coming Saturday, with the Israeli official who spoke to the Post stating, this is the Jerusalem Post, stated that they believe that Trump's 60-day deadline to reach an agreement would eventually be extended, meaning that the negotiations are going well. An additional reporter expressed confidence in the United States. An additional Israeli official told reporters that Israel was in ongoing dialogue with the Americans regarding the nuclear talks, but dialogue is not one-sided, and we are expressing our position. There's continuous communications on many levels. I wouldn't recommend drawing early conclusions. I'm confident that the United States is committed to preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, the official said. On Monday, Defense Minister Israel Katz met with members of the IDF General Staff Forum, along with the Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, and stated, "We will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. We will have to make decisions, and we know that that there are those who will carry them out if required to act." And so that will bring us to this story. Israel Katz threatens to attack Iran as Trump tries to cut a contested nuclear deal. This comes after sources told the Jerusalem Post that Israel had potentially missed its chance to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, with the tone of the news showing U.S. President Donald Trump getting ever closer to a new nuclear deal with Iran. Defense Minister Israel Katz on Monday reissued a threat that Israel remained ready to attack Tehran's nuclear program. Quote, "The central mission is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon," Katz told the IDF High Command. Quote, "Israel will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and we are prepared, of course, in a deep dialogue with the United States." The defense minister added that in Israel's broader wars and in its fight against Iran, we know we have someone to count on. In the end, we will be required to undertake decisions. We know that there is someone to execute them, and this is true of in any place, including with Iran. If there is a need to attack, there is someone who will do it. Despite Katz's threat, top Israeli officials have been telling the Jerusalem Post on an ongoing basis that for weeks there is a significant concern that Trump will block Israel from acting so that he can cut a mediocre nuclear deal with the Islamic Republic. And so that's the key right there.
That's a talking point.
Yeah, but that's the key right there. It's like Trump, it cannot be argued, regardless of what your view of Trump is. I mean, and I know there's a broad spectrum, even MAGA, of Trump when it comes to Israel. There are people who believe that he's a Zionist puppet. There are people like I don't buy into that at all. I do think that Trump leans into that for very specific reasons. And I think the reason is because regardless of how you feel about Israel, nobody can deny that Trump has done more for Israel than any other U.S. president. And whatever Trump's going to do with Iran, he's going to make sure that Israel's protected. I don't think anybody would argue that. Like whether you hate Trump or love Trump, everyone understands that Trump is going to make sure that Iran does not attack Israel. That's I think the end game.
But he's also not trying to seek some mediocre deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran just so he can get a win under his belt. Like these conflicts have been going on since 1948. Before that, even, but certainly in earnest, my entire adult life, these conflicts have been going on. It is counterintuitive that President Trump is going to allow war with Iran, as he has been actively in his first term and into his second term trying to end the wars. I want people to stop dying, trying to stop the conflicts, make deals, not war, right? Let's build beautiful. I saw you talking last night about the place in North Korea that looks like Mar-a-Lago a little bit.
Yep.
Making Gaza the Riviera, right? The things that the way President Trump dreams is not, I really want us to be caught up in war with Iran for the next 20 years. No, it's world peace. It's make the world, more beautiful, more prosperous place. We can actually find win-win-win deals that work for all of us and move out of this period of forever wars. That's President Trump's position. He's been pretty consistent on it. Anybody saying that he's saber rattling for war with Iran, or that he's going to follow Israel into war with Iran, I think is bullshit.
Yes,
I think that's just talking points. You're muted.
Oh, I am. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
Oh, it might be me. Can you guys hear Ghost or no?
Can y'all hear me? Because I think
because I can't hear you at all, but I can hear myself.
Chat, let me know if you can hear me.
Bravest, I hear you. You guys can hear Ghost. Okay, so that's me then.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to refresh. I'll be right back.
Yep. So this is Mark Levin. Mark Levin is a really, really good barometer on this situation, because he was recently appointed to be part of like this guidance advisory council for Homeland Security to give Kristi Noem a bunch of advice on how to run the border. So he's technically part of the Trump administration, as like a consultant or whatever. Here's what he said about the article that we just read. He says, crazy. Looks like Iran knows more about what's being negotiated than Israel. What's that all about? Criticizing Trump, which I've been
Mark Levin.
Yeah, so I've been pointing to this, and he's part of the Trump administration now. As I just said, he's part of like this new advisory council that Trump created for the Homeland Security, which is a totally illegitimate organization anyway. And then here he is yesterday. This is about Russia, and we're about to get to that. But he says, not just Russia. This is about Russia backing an Iran nuclear plant. We're going to read that story next. He says, not just Russia, warmonger Putin's isolationist fifth column in America supports nukes for Iran too, the enemy within. And then he says 20 minutes later, the Putin supporting isolationist fifth column in our country warns that Russia might use nukes against us in Russia. In Russia-Ukraine war, but has absolutely no problem with Iran having nukes and repeatedly and openly threatening our existence. These are dangerously stupid people. I assume he's talking about like Burning Bright and myself when he talks about isolationist fifth columnists, because what he's saying is isolationist, meaning we don't want to get involved in wars in the Middle East or Eastern Europe. I never said that Russia's going to use nukes against us. They're definitely not going to use nukes against us. There's no reason to. They're kicking ass on the ground anyway. And Oak and I were talking about that on Monday. But this is like Mark Levin subverting Trump at every step when it comes to the negotiations. He's part of this group of Republicans that are like, I can't believe you're meeting face to face with Putin and giving him legitimacy by looking him in the eye and cutting a deal with him. We need to be fighting Putin to the last man, fighting Putin to the last Ukrainian. He's been saying that for months. And so the article that he's referencing there is this: Russia to fund construction of new nuclear plant in Iran. This is from 3 days ago. On top of funding the construction of a new nuclear plant in Iran, Russia will supply Iran with 55 billion cubic meters per year. It says Russia will fund the construction of a new nuclear plant in Iran. Iranian oil minister Massad Pajnejad said in the closing ceremony of the 18th Economic Cooperation Commission on Friday. The two countries will undertake the construction of a new nuclear energy facilities and the completion of phases 2 and 3 of the Bashir power plant using Moscow's credit line. Russia helped Iran build its first nuclear reactor at Bashir in the south of the country. That's actually not true. We built Bashir. The United States built Bashir. We built the first phase of it. We finished it in 1975. And then the Iran revolution of 1979 happened, we obviously ended our diplomacy with them. The Soviets eventually made friends with it, and then the Soviets helped them finish the construction at Bushehr, but it was already up and operating, I believe, in 1975. So, and now they're saying they're going to build out phases 2 and 3 of that plant. So, but you can't have a nuclear power plant running for, what is it, 50 years without like maintenance and parts being replaced and all that. So the Soviets and the Russians were helping them do this whole time. So and that's where the allegations of enriching uranium come from, is they're enriching it from this reactor at Bushehr that we built for them.
I don't believe anything they say.
And so that
I don't believe anything that they say about Iran's intentions with nuclear energy. I don't believe that because Iran has a nuclear program that all of a sudden means that they're going to nuke the world. I think that is very effective messaging from people like Mark Levin that we've been told for generations. This is the same Cold War messaging. It's like this new label on the Cold War messaging in the age of the war on terror, and the always warmongers are really struggling with the idea of peace, right? We continue to see, oh, well, you need to be afraid of over there, and we need to go bomb those people, and we need to be concerned about this. I remember when when Putin invaded, Putin's unprovoked aggression in 2022, the vehement, rabid neocon response to, well, even if it means, and this I'm paraphrasing, but this is how the message played for me. Even if we send tens of thousands, millions of Americans to die, Putin is just so bad, Russia is just so bad that we have to fight this all the way. We need American boots on the ground. The neocons were calling for American boots on the ground in Ukraine damn near immediately. Yep. These people want war. And as the mom of two military age sons with a third one that's nearing being military aged, no, I'm not going to follow you into war, Mark Levin. I don't give a shit. I don't care about this narrative about how destabilizing it's going to be if we allow these people to seek prosperity.
Yep.
Because the stabilizing forces have been a disaster and have kept us in a world war since 1947.
Yep. That is absolutely true. And like, as I'm sharing right here, Lapid, the guy who I said is the quote unquote more reasonable person, he's like more reasonable on basically every issue. He presents himself as the centrist. He's like, I will be the reasonable. He's the leader of the opposition party against Netanyahu. So Netanyahu gets thrown out of office. If he does, this guy most likely becomes prime minister. And he said, this is from 2 weeks ago, Israel must demand from the U.S. no nuclear enrichment for Saudi Arabia. And here he is back in September. This is September of 2023. So, over a year and a half ago, Lapid must not give Riyadh path to nukes. And what he's responding to right there is he's responding to MBS going on Brett Baer a few days before that and telling Brett Baer, why can't we have a nuclear reactor in Saudi Arabia? Like, we want a nuclear reactor. We want nuclear power. We need it if we want to accomplish all of our ambitious projects that we want to do and bring and this high-tech economy we want. We need nuclear power. And so, like, you're absolutely right. This isn't about Netanyahu, and this isn't necessarily about certainly isn't about Hamas or any of that. This is about preventing the Middle East from entering the golden age with the rest of the world, and they're prepared to start World War III over it. And that's what we all have to be cognizant of as we move forward, is that's what Trump's dealing with. And we'll see which side the Republicans land on with this. But I think Levin is the canary in the coal mine, where he is signaling that the Republicans, a lot of them, are actually going to oppose Trump if Trump meets with Putin and tries to normalize things in the Middle East and allow Saudi Arabia and Iran and others to have nuclear reactors and enter the golden age. That's what I think, where I think we're heading. So let's wrap up here with Russia, because we only really talked about North Korea and Ukraine yesterday. Well, actually, wait, I'm sorry. This is actually really important. To that point, we have that explosion.
You have a show in 14 minutes, just FYI.
That's fine. That's fine. Matt knows that I can show up at 12:01 and be ready to go. There was an explosion at Bandar Abbas port. This is from 2 days ago from Reuters. Death toll in Iran's port blast rises to 70. Just to give everyone some context on what this all means. As I was talking about the other day, or posting about, this is what's called the International North-South Transportation Corridor. It was set up by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is kind of like the counter to the European Union. It doesn't operate like the European Union. It's not like a bureaucracy that subverts nationality or sovereignty, but it's a collection of countries in the East that are trying to set up like a transportation trade route, basically. And so rather than, in order to get goods to St. Petersburg, rather than going the traditional route of Mumbai through the Red Sea, around the, past the Houthis, through the Suez Canal, Mediterranean, around Britain and to St. Petersburg, you would instead go to Bandar Abbas, then put it on a rail or a pipeline if it's oil, and then send it up.
It does look much more efficient.
Yeah, send it up through Moscow. And now the global hegemony doesn't want this, because if this becomes the predominant way that they trade in the East, Moscow becomes the nexus for Europe, because Moscow has all those pipelines that go into Europe. It would then become like a choke point for European trade. And so this explosion happens in Bandar Abbas. Bandar Abbas, by the way, has recently been built up to become part of this, like a key node in this trade route. The Saudi Arabians, MBS, invested billions in this port, and they are historic enemies of Iran. So they believed in this port. Key allies of the United States believed in this port and thought this was good, of course, because of their relationship with Russia. And so, and then, this map shows the corridor wars and how this all gets affected, because Saudi Arabia is investing in this port, but another alternative path is to deliver it to Abu Dhabi in the UAE, go to Riyadh, and then from Riyadh you go up to Jordan and Haifa in Israel, and then go from there.
Shouldn't it be for them to decide, these nations on the map that we're looking at? Shouldn't it be for them to decide what their shipping routes are? And I understand that we have U.S. interests in the region and everything, but opposing the growth, and understand Belt and Road, and miss me with the China hate, but why is this the U.S. and NATO's decision to oppose to the death, and even to the brink of war?
Exactly. Well, I think a lot of this goes back to the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is owned by a company called the Suez Company, which was originally a British company, but it was a joint venture by Britain and France. It's now based in Paris. I've done a dig on it a month or two ago. It has a huge umbrella of infrastructure construction companies that build all the dams, all of the infrastructure, power plants, power lines, canals.
So it's a threat to the status quo.
Yes.
And it's a threat to who currently owns the infrastructure, and a threat to a more multipolar world.
And the Suez Company took over Egypt in 1875 when Egypt couldn't make payments on the shares that it held in that company. It defaulted on its payments because the cotton price globally crashed, because the Confederacy was being embargoed, the Civil War ended, and then all of a sudden the world was flooded with Southern cotton. And so cotton prices crashed. Giza cotton from Mike Lindell wasn't worth anything. Egypt had no money, couldn't make the payments. Britain said, that's fine. We're now going to take control of your government, and we now control you. You're now part of the British Empire, 1875. And so, so Suez Canal became part of the London octopus hydra,
all right. So you're going to go into Russia here next, which I know is not going to be a low word count for you. So I'm very quickly going to hit the rants. We have three. We only have three. So I'm just going to hit them real quick so that we don't run out of time. KH Jacobs thought Bondi arrest of another Tesla radical and people mad she's not focused on bigger things. She says each time they won't tolerate domestic terrorism, maybe setting expectations for BLM 2.0. I think that's an excellent point. I have no shade for Pam Bondi. I think that the level of operations that they're engaging in are incredibly complex. And, you know, how do you roll up a RICO? Well, you get the lower level players, you get them to flip. You get the next level players, you get them to flip. That's a lot of what I think we're seeing. Villas 30. Oh, go ahead.
I completely agree. I think that's you're drafting off the momentum of the Republican GOP uniparty.
Yeah, great. Villas 34, there's two parts to this. Regarding crowdsourcing, did y'all see Wisdom of the Crowd on CBS, a show about using people to solve crimes, etc.? It aired at the same time the Q Post started. The whole idea was fantastic, catching on suddenly. The main guy got accused of assault and the show was canceled. Coincidence? Anyone done a dig on it? I've never heard of that show, but I'm copying it now because I'm going to check it out. I love a show with a conspiracy theory backstory.
Okay.
All right, so Russia.
Not familiar, but yeah. Okay, so with Russia, we have the latest and greatest from yesterday. Trump envoy sought to convince Putin on terms of ceasefire deal. This is from Bloomberg via RT. Steve Witkoff met with Russian president last week in the latest round of diplomacy on the Ukraine conflict. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff sought to persuade Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire last week that would halt fighting in the Ukraine conflict, along with the current front lines. Bloomberg has reported, citing sources, Putin maintained a firm stance during the lengthy meeting, with sources said. The discussions on Friday marked the latest in a series of contacts between Moscow and Washington in recent months. Witkoff, seen as a key figure in kickstarting negotiations on the Ukraine conflict, has held multiple rounds of talks with senior Russian officials, including at least 3 meetings with Putin. So it's important to note that Witkoff has triggered a lot of the Republicans like Mark Levin from meeting with the Iranians. He's also triggering those same people from meeting with Putin. Yesterday, we reported on the progress that Mossad Bolis, Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, another businessman turned envoy, has made in Africa with the DRC in negotiating peace between them and Rwanda. So you're seeing these businessmen come in and do the job of the State Department better than the diplomats are able to do, the bureaucrats are able to do. And it's probably ruffling a lot of feathers and pissing off a lot of people, you could imagine. So I expect we'll probably see some sort of triggered apoplectic post from Mark Levin on that. This is from Trump. Ukraine could be crushed very shortly. According to Trump, the U.S. president has claimed he is saving the nation by trying to mediate between Moscow and Kiev. Ukraine could face a significant defeat in the near future if it does not sit down at the negotiating table with Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned. Trump made his comments in an interview with The Atlantic published on Monday. When asked whether he has sympathy for Kiev, the president replied by saying that his policy is aimed at saving Ukraine, and warned that continued conflict would not bring the country any good. Quote, "I think I'm saving that nation. I think that nation will be crushed very shortly," he said, adding that Russia has a big war machine. Let's face it. Separately, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also emphasized on Monday that Kiev would not win the conflict against Moscow. Quote, "If this doesn't stop, the Ukrainians aren't winning the war," end quote. Vance, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, told Charlie Kirk. He also said it was weird to expect Russia to collapse because of the ongoing hostilities. The U.S. has grown increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of negotiations between Washington, Moscow, and Kiev. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned last week that the U.S. could walk away from the talks altogether if the process stalls. That's an important caveat. Mike Waltz, this is kind of a surprising little twist here because I kind of consider him part of the neocon contingent. Ukraine, one of the world's most corrupt countries, Trump advisor. Mike Waltz has urged Washington to closely monitor how Kiev is spending financial aid it receives. U.S. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz has called for proper oversight of the financial assistance Washington provides to Kiev. In a Monday interview with Fox News, the top state official called Ukraine one of the most corrupt nations in the world. The U.S. Congress has authorized roughly $175 billion for Ukraine since 2022, although a significant portion of that funding has gone to American industries and the government activities related to the conflict. It just goes on to give some background and context to the conversation, which we've already discussed. And then it ends with Pentagon Inspector General Robert Storch reported last November that, quote, "corruption continues to complicate Ukraine's efforts to achieve its EU and NATO aspirations, particularly due to multiple scandals in the defense ministry." There's one more I want to hit before we do the mineral deals one, and that is this one. Kiev's last gamble. Ukraine is now eyeing teens and women as cannon fodder in desperate push for manpower.
Wow.
And the TLDR is that they're now looking to not only lower the conscription age from 25 to 18, but also to say women are now going to be conscripted and sent to the front lines.
That is how you do a TLDR, Ghost. Yeah. That's how it's done.
Love it. And this is being corroborated by Western governments as well. They're saying that they're struggling to muster troops for Ukraine. So this is being corroborated. And then where I want to end is, well, this one. Steve Witkoff fumbling foreign talks is dragging Trump down.
No, this is for tomorrow's brief.
Okay.
You can't spoil your.
We won't dig into it. That's just a headline that's worth noting.
Last night Ghost sent over a double take on this Witkoff stuff, and then after he was all sealed and done for the brief, this article dropped, and I was like, "Holy crap! Have you seen this?" So I'm excited to get your take on this. But you can do the TLDR real quick.
Just that I think this is the Republicans. This is the Uniparty telling you that Steve Witkoff is bad, and we should stop letting him negotiate peace with our quote unquote adversaries. And so I think that divide is growing.
Yeah. PJW, a TLDR means too long, didn't read. It's a high level summary that we are always encouraging Ghosts to adopt because he knows too many things and he tries to tell you all of them. Just one final, you have one more?
Well, just that they're about to sign this draft minerals deal. You sent this to me this morning.
But isn't this like Zelensky has almost signed this deal like 9 times?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. It's always like a little.
I'm not standing on that rug.
Yeah, it's a little tease. So the TLDR here is that the reports is that now they're going to sign it. You had made a mention that the debt thing has been pulled off. Can you explain that? I don't know if you read that somewhere. I didn't see that anywhere in here, but
So what part?
You had said when you texted it to me, you said the debt agreement is now off the table.
So that was when I saw this, and I don't know if it's in the article in the subheader of this article. When I grabbed the link and sent it to you, it said U.S. agrees to drop debt repayment as a condition of the deal, something along those lines. So we shall see if that comes to fruition.
We'll wait and see. Once it gets signed, we'll wait and like evaluate the actual terms of the deal. But yeah, that does it. So we're at
all right. One more really quickly, because this broke while we were on the air just now. And thanks to Namster for letting us know. Last week, Brian and I had BX on X on the show talking about 764 and Order of 9 Angles and the horrible things that they do to children online and sometimes IRL. This just broke, as I said, while we were on the air, just I think like 30 minutes ago. Arrest mark, significant takedown within the violent online network. Leaders of 764 arrested and charged for operating global child exploitation network. The people she calls, BX calls War and Trippy. Those are their Luciferian gang member names, I guess. But good news to end the show today. As we said, there will not be a Badlands Daily tomorrow, but there will be live Badlands Daily from GART on Friday. Everybody get your GART tickets, badlandsmedia.tv/events. We'll be with Badlands Live 9 to 5 going on now. I'll be running that stream this afternoon. Aside from that, tune in right now to Breaking History.
Thanks, guys.
We got let Ghosts get over to Breaking History. We'll see you guys.
See you.
Ouch.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.